de vous revoir aujourd'hui pour les gens qui reviennent pour ce nouveau webinaire, le 3e de la série. Pour les gens qui sont là pour la première fois, merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. Je pense que ça va être des heures vraiment précieuses qu'on va passer ensemble. Donc, je vais commencer par faire juste les petites notes logistiques en français, puis je vais les dire en anglais après. So I'll just start with a few logistics notes in French, and then I'll switch to English. Donc, comme je vous l'ai dit tantôt, on a un service d'interprétation qui est disponible. Il y a Caroline Giguère et Mike Lemay qui sont là avec nous aujourd'hui pour faire la traduction simultanée. On est très reconnaissante. Donc, vous pouvez juste choisir l'option français sous l'icône d'interprétation et vous allez entendre la traduction de ce que nos panélistes vont avoir à partager aujourd'hui. Pour les gens qui se joignent à nous pour la première fois et qui se demandent où sont leurs boutons caméra et micro, c'est normal que vous ne les trouviez pas. On a vraiment choisi de faire un format webinaire pour 2 raisons. Premièrement, c'est des webinaires qui sont enregistrés, comme je vous l'ai mentionné. Donc, ils vont être rendus disponibles sur le nouveau site web en planification autochtone qui est créé par ma collègue Émy Rainville et qui sera en ligne d'ici la fin mars. Donc, on voulait vraiment préserver la qualité d'enregistrement. Ça, c'est la première raison. Et la deuxième raison, c'est aussi qu'on voulait garder un sentiment d'intimité pour être capable d'avoir vraiment une belle discussion, tout le monde ensemble, puis se sentir comme si on était dans un petit cocon. Donc, on vous invite à vous joindre à nous dans le petit cocon. Et vous avez plein de façons quand même d'interagir avec nous. Donc, il y a bien entendu le clavardage, donc le chat. Vous pouvez envoyer des messages aux autres et aux panélistes. Vous pouvez envoyer des messages à tout le monde. Vous pouvez envoyer des messages privés. Donc, vous avez quand même beaucoup d'options pour participer. Vous pouvez aussi écrire des questions dans le clavardage. Envoyer des questions aux panélistes à tous les moments. Ou vous pouvez même utiliser la section questions-réponses, l'icône qui est dans le bas. Et je vous invite aussi, si vous êtes comme moi et que vous aimez les émoticônes, vous pouvez nous envoyer des réactions, nous applaudir, nous envoyer des cœurs, des pouces, des confettis. Donc, gênez-vous pas, vous pouvez faire ça aussi. Ensuite, si vous avez besoin de soutien technique, on a 2 de nos collègues qui sont là avec nous aujourd'hui, Embry Isaac et Camilla Fradette, qui sont disponibles il s'appelle Tech Support Soutien technique. Donc, n'hésitez pas si vous avez besoin de quoi que ce soit. Oh! Oui, et voilà, c'est aussi possible de faire ça. Et finalement, juste vous dire que, comme je mentionnais, là, vous pouvez vraiment poser vos questions à tous les moments à travers le chat ou la section questions-réponses. On va intégrer vos questions, vos commentaires au fur et à mesure. Et sinon, je vais aussi vous mentionner qu'on va prendre une pause autour de 3 heures et on va vraiment finir au plus tard à 4 heures. Là. On essaie d'être très ponctuel pour vous respecter tous et toutes dans vos horaires. So I'll do this logistics part in English as well. So for those of you just joining us, if you need language interpretation, please click the icon at the bottom of your screen and select English, and you will hear our amazing interpreter's voice, Caroline Giguère and Mike Lemay, in your ears as we go along, translating into English when necessary. For those of you just joining us who are wondering where their video and mic buttons are, you don't have any as participants. It was a choice we made to choose this video webinar format for 2 reasons. One of them is really to preserve the intimacy of the discussions. The topics we're going over can be pretty heavy or pretty deep at times, and so we wanted to preserve this little cocoon. So we invite you to be part of this cocoon in different ways. So you can use the reactions button at the bottom of your screen to send us confettis, hearts, claps, whatever you want, they're in there. And you can also use the chat to write to any of us privately or to the whole group as you prefer. And you can use the Q&A section as well to write questions or comments as we go along. So we're really hoping that we can still interact with each other, even though we're keeping the cameras and the mics for the panelists so that we do preserve the recording. So this webinar is recorded. It's going to be available on the new Indigenous Planning website, which my colleague Emmy is working on. It's going to be available in a few weeks, so it won't be straight away because we will have a little bit of editing to do, putting up logos and stuff like that, but it will be available in a few weeks. At any point, if you need support, we have our two amazing colleagues, Embry Isaac and Camilla Fredette, who are available under tech support. There you can chat with them and they can help you out if you need to. You can ask questions or make comments in the chat or in the Q&A section at any point. We don't have like an official question period at the end. So do that as we go along. We'll take a break around 3 so that we can stretch and take care of ourselves a bit. And then we'll finish at the latest at 4 to really respect everyone's time and schedule and commitments. So I think that's about it for the logistics piece. For this webinar, because our panelists have English as a first or second language, I will be speaking in English, but feel free to write in French in the chat, and Amy and I will be doing the translation. And before I go any further, as for every webinar, we really wanted to do just a little opening activity to take a moment to really acknowledge and share our gratitude for the lands that welcome us and hold us and cherish us. So we invite all of you, all of you participants, to share in the chat what land you're calling in from, what land is holding you and feeding you right now, and also to help our panelists get a feel for who's in the room. We invite you to write one word that represents the concept of relationship for you. So we'll take a moment to do that in the chat, and then we'll continue with the opening. And if you want everyone to see what you write in the chat, just make sure you select everyone. Oh, beautiful. So people are starting to write in. We have people calling in from Giskapegiak, from Kahnawake, from Madanak. From Kitigan Zibi, from Wendage. Welcome everyone. Kahnawake, Wendage again. Oh, Naman Shipu. Wow. Manwan, welcome Mashtoyats. Namit, so Eastern Innu communities. Kwe, oh, Kawachikama. Wow, Naskapi territory, welcome. Listicoj, Mingma territory, Abitsiri Winiaki, welcome. It's great to have you here. Ikwanchit as well. Long Point First Nation, of course. we're so glad to have you here. Listicoj for joining from Wendage, welcome. And it's great to see, we know quite a few of you. We're really happy to have you here. Temiskaming First Nation, awesome, welcome. And so if we look at some of the words that people are mentioning around relationship, we're talking about respect and rewarding. We're talking about trust. We're talking about sharing. Respect and support, trust, humility, respect, support. Beautiful words. I think we're going to have some fun material to work with today. This is awesome. Challenging, yes. Thanks, Amy. That one to accountability. Awesome. All right. So we're gonna get to our amazing panelists in a second. But before we get there, I will tell you that I am presently helped by Anishinaabe territory. I live in Huaynahada, and I am so incredibly grateful to this land for holding me, and to the people who've been taking care of this land for thousands and thousands and forever years. So I'm sending a lot of love to the people who care for this land, and I will do my very best to care for her too. So my name is Catherine. I am planning coordinator for the First Nations of Quebec and Labrador Sustainable Development Institute. And I am your host here today for this whole series. The Indigenous Planning Webinar series was born out of a desire to really acknowledge and celebrate and share the very deep roots that planning has in this territory, in this region. And so for every webinar of this series, this is what we do. We acknowledge and we celebrate and we inspire each other. And we hope that you leave each webinar feeling inspired and having deepened your own understanding of how you want to continue doing this work in your nation and your community. And before I go further, I'll invite my colleague Emmy to introduce herself as well.
Oui, tout le monde, mon nom c'est Amy. Je suis Innu-québécoise, ma mère est Innu de Pessamit et mon père est québécois de l'Estrie. Catherine, tantôt, t'as utilisé mon nom de famille puis ça m'a fait faire un petit j'étais genre, mon Dieu, comme, je peux le dire que tu l'utilises, fait que j'étais vraiment surprise. Mais oui, c'est ça, je suis chargée de projet en planification. Je travaille à l'IDD depuis 3 ans. Ben, en fait, ça fait plus que 3 ans. Et comme Catherine a dit, je suis en train de monter un site Internet pour la planification communautaire qui va être disponible en ligne très, très bientôt. D'ici la fin mars, devrait être publié. Donc, yay! C'est ça pour moi.
Thank you, Emmy Jacquemin. And so just to give you a little bit of an overview of the whole webinar series, for those of you who've joined us before, this is a repeat. You'll hear this introduction for every webinar. But for those of you who are joining us for the first time, the series has 7 parts. This is the 3rd webinar of the series. And so the first webinar was really about planning with the land. And so the first four of the series are really about planning from who you are. So of course we started with the land. And then the second webinar last week was about stories and language and how they teach and root everything that we do when we're talking about Indigenous planning. And then this week, we're going to be talking about relationship and about rebuilding the circle and about doing that from who we are. And then for those of you who are going to be joining us next week, we're going to be talking about roles and responsibilities and governance and how that looks like. And then for those of us who are going to be joining us for the next part, the 3 webinars in March that are also going to be amazing, we're really looking at one type of planning, which is comprehensive community planning, which is just another version of doing Indigenous planning that nations have been working on and developing for about 20 years now. And then we'll look at the different parts and stages of this type of planning and what it can do for you and your community. And so we're going to be taking everything that we've done in the first 4 and really showing how it's done through some of our planning mentors who are going to be there to tell you about their planning stories and how they've been embodying those teachings. So this is the journey that we're on, and we're really glad to have you here. And I think we're ready to dive in. We look ready. So I'll invite Bradley Polson to go first. Go, Bradley, and introduce yourself.
My name is Bradley Polson. I am from the Anishinaabe community of Long Point First Nation. I'm a youth within the community, and my current role in the community is both comprehensive community planner and communications officer. So yeah, I've been in this role for about a year and a half, and I'm really having fun with the position. Well, I guess I got into this work because I believe in community voices and how they should be involved in any kind of decision making. So I wanted to make the community voices heard, and they should have a say in their future. So my role, I help with, like I said, community voices. I help create plans from the inputs and making sure that there's good communication with between, you know, the community members and leadership to ensure that, you know, all voices are heard and you know, it reflects our values, culture, and, you know, all of our traditions. So yeah, I had lots of fun in the last year and a half with the role, and I'm ready to see what will happen next. So I can go on and on, but I'll let the mic go to someone else. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Bradley. Kim, welcome.
Hey everyone, my name is Kim Chevrier. I am Anishinaabe from Kebewek First Nation. Let me see. In my current role, I presently work for the First Nations Human Resources Development Commission, but in the past, I did hold the role of community coordinator for our CCP in Kebewek. So it's been a couple of years I've been away from that, but with my new role working for the commission, I'm still very fortunate that planning is planning, right? So I am able to still work with communities across the region. I work with 30 different communities before I worked, you know, just solely with my own community. But I think having that experience and working with the other communities through the CCP, you know, kind of opened my eyes to, you know, the work that has to get done. And this planning role for me as a program manager under a youth strategy really opened my eyes to, you know, what needs to happen in the future for our generations and what needs to happen today in order to be able to move forward in a healthy manner. What motivates me to continue doing my work is just that gratification that we are in a process of healing, that we are here for one another, and just to see the strength of our communities really puts my heart at ease. And knowing that if we are to work in positive environments with good relationships, then we, you know, we can accomplish anything that we want to. Thank you.
Miigwech, Kim. Kanyahawe, Linda, welcome. Oh, wait, I'll unmute you. There you go.
Kahnawage ni tawageno tano kanya kahaga ni jatota. My name is Linda Delormier, or Garunyahawe. I was trying to think of how I want to introduce myself. And I think for this specific webinar, I think who I used to be plays a role in who I am now. And I spent most of my life working in my community for the council office, in language development and culture development, and land reacquisition, and land claims, and governance development, and the list goes on and on and on, economic development initiatives, all of these things. And it's always been my dream to have community, to be in community, to be a part of community. And it just broke my heart that that wasn't what our community was like. And so I worked hard my whole life to try to find that. And in 2017, I became the CCP coordinator. And you know, we did some really amazing work, you know, especially for a community as large as Kahnawake. And since then, I realized that I wanted to take a different avenue on how to create community because it starts with us. It starts with each of us. And I went back to school for my language. I went to school to learn different healing modalities. I went back to school to learn a bunch of different things. I created my own consulting firm. called Junhio, which means we feel well or we live well. I started a program that's a year-long program called Skana Ige, which means I walk in peace. And that's what it's about, like just coming back to ourselves, right? And I also am part of the training of 18 individuals in our community to become a team of trauma-informed community trainers. And so taking that journey from the outside to what we need to embody in order to create what we want in our life is what I've been doing for the past, I don't know, decade or so, 10, 15 years. And I like it. And I'm glad you're here and we can talk about it.
I'll go on. I think we all like it, even though sometimes it's challenging and all of the other stuff. I think that's why we're here. And when Emmy and I were thinking about this specific webinar, you know, we started asking ourselves, like, what kind of space do we want to create to talk about relationship, and like, where are we coming from? And one of the first names that came for us was your name, Bradley. And there are many reasons why it came up. And for everyone who's here, like I told this to Bradley this morning, and so I've got his permission to say what I'm going to say now. But you know, we've been working with Bradley in his role as a planning coordinator for a year and a half, about 2 years, more or less. But in this time that we've known him, Bradley has this amazing ability to really listen. And so it's one of the key things that's been there. And so, but he doesn't just like listen and then it floats around. Like he listens, he integrates it, and then he embodies it again in his own unique way. And so we're so grateful that you're choosing to be here with us, Bradley, today. And don't be fooled. Bradley might seem like the quiet type in the group, but he will just drop that mic at your feet whenever he has the chance. And so we're really grateful that we're here. And I am going to start with you. And if you want, you know, you started telling us a little bit that that Longboard First Nation, your home community, has been involved in community planning. And so do you want to tell us a little bit about that journey that your community has embarked on with community-led planning? Like, how did it start? Like, what is it looking like at this point? Why did you choose to embark on this journey collectively, like as a community?
I guess I'll kind of give you a little brief history about that, like myself. Like you know, growing up, you know, I grew up outside of the community. So, you know, I was placed in the foster care system, and, you know, I never really, you know, grew up within, you know, Long Point, and, you know, I missed out on all, you know, my history, the language. I don't speak the language, and, you know, just all the connections in the community. So, you know, my journey has been about, you know, learning or relearning and, you know, reconnecting with my roots while helping, you know, others do the same in the community. Because even when I grew up, when I came back to the community, I came back when I was a young teenager, and you know, I saw like almost like a disconnection between, you know, community members and you know, leadership, you know, departments and things like that. So like I felt like, you know, especially among the youth, voices weren't being heard. So, you know, uh, I, being a teenager, I didn't know what I can do, but you know, I knew I wanted to be part of the solution, and I think this is a one way to, you know, contribute to that. You know, like I've only been here a year and a half, and um, there's some things, you know, I've been able to do for the community already, and there's a lot more things that will have to be done. But you know, always make sure to, you know, to learn from, you know, you know, the community, especially the elders, because, you know, I want to know how, you know, things were planned back, you know, back before, you know, my time, even um, like also working with not only elders but the youth. LPFN just revitalized the youth council in their community. So I was happy to be part of that because the youth have to be involved in all kinds of decision making. They have to be involved in leadership. So I really am passionate about involving our youth. And also, in the community, I was able to help, build some communication tools for the community. All communities should have, different channels to share their information. Newsletters, websites, even a communications app. Social media. There's many different ways we can, share information, and I was really happy to help Long Point get their website, which is now finalized, and we're in works to getting a communications app to give real-time information to our community members. So I am in dual roles, communications and comprehensive community planning. So it's at times it's a juggle to balance the two. Which one do I focus on the most? But a lot of times they're intertwined. So the journey has been um, you know um, it was something personal to me as well. It wasn't just a job that I'm being paid to do. I really love um, the reconnection I'm having with my community, because I didn't grow up like I explained, but it's giving me a chance to really reconnect it. I love it. So yeah, that's it for now. But whenever I say I'm done, there's always little more information that pop up after I'm done speaking. But for now, thank you, Miigwech.
Miigwech, Bradley. Yeah, this journey to reconnect. What about you, Kim? What did that journey look like for you? The journey to renew or deepen your own connections? I'm going to unmute you. There you go.
There we go. Thank you, Catherine. My journey has many places involved. I left my community very, very young. I had just graduated. I was 16. Um, I went up north for the summer, all the way to Waswanipi. Spent my summer there working, and from there I went directly to the city and I went to college. Um, I'm going to make this part really short. So I spent many, many years in the Ottawa area, um, working for the Native Friendship Center. And it was there that I think, being so young and getting that experience, I was very fortunate to have a beautiful mentor who was in touch with her culture, her language. And learning from her, she taught me the importance of knowing who you were. And even at that young age, I think I still had so much to learn. Having grown up in my community of Quebec, we lost a lot of our culture and our tradition. So it was really an eye opener to know what I was missing, or for a better word, what had been displaced. So I continued my journey working in the city and always working with First Nation communities, not communities, well, individuals, not just in Ottawa, but across Canada. And I got to meet so many different people. And at one point, I decided it's time to go home. So I came home about 25 years ago. And even then, I found a little out of place. It took me a while to be comfortable being in my community, and and even today, sometimes that's still a struggle when you've been gone so long, and you may not be that fit, for better words, I guess. But when it came to understanding and wanting to know more about my connection to my identity, I started focusing on being on the land. So I spent a lot of time on the lake. I spent a lot of time in the bush. I had never been hunting before. I went moose hunting. I got lost, but I went moose hunting. So started it, just getting more involved in those outdoor activities, fishing. To this day, I still love fishing. I don't like the winter cold, but I still enjoy the fishing. So that connection to land has been an ongoing process for me. But at the same time, I love to read and I love to research. So I do a lot of online reading. Watch a lot of videos. There's a particular artist that I was really, really taken with, and Richard Wagamese, and his story is absolutely beautiful, and he's got many books out there. So that kind of opened me up to, wanting to explore what other authors were out there and what can I get my hands on. And it isn't just in books, but it's in people that I've met along my journey who've also, shared their knowledge and their experiences. And it really made me proud to be an Indigenous person. And so, having said that, having worked with my community for Quebec for 5 years, not just as a CCP coordinator, but working with our health center, it kind of allowed me to explore my community a little bit more, to understand my community a little bit more, and which eventually led to my role as CCP coordinator. And that experience in itself was an eye opener on not just what we've achieved and what we've been able to do to date, but the obstacles that we've had to overcome and the challenges that we've also had. And how do we work together in order to change that? So for me, this question is all about renewing and deepening your own connections, right? So I really think that for myself, being open to exploring what's out there and not taking anything for granted, and being accepting and having my gratitudes to it, and enjoying the day, if it's a snowstorm, even just to reconnect and understand how important it is to ground ourselves in every moment, and to feel what we need to feel in order to be able to help other people.
Miigwech.
You're welcome.
Yeah. What about you, Linda? You want to tell us a bit more? You started telling us about the journey. What other pieces of the reconnection or the deepening do you want to share with us?
Well, I want to say first to Bradley and Kim, thank you so much for, opening to those really personal parts of your life. And that's what relationship and connection is all about, so, go. Where do I want to, there's so much. My mom was an activist. She was a part of a group of women who started the Kahnawake Survival School. And so when I was a kid in the 70s, she was always in Ottawa protesting. There were always bailiffs coming to our house. We were always marching for something. And she used to tell us all the time, and I tell this story all the time. But she used to say, don't accept what the government just wants to give you. They don't know who you are. They don't know what it is that you need. You go into your community. You find out from your community what it is that they want, what they desire, what they want for their lives. And that's what you go for. Because what they're doing now is they're throwing a pot of money in the center and they're making us all fight for it. And that's how we're going to destroy ourselves. And they're just going to sit back and watch and laugh, because they don't have to do anything, because, the doctrine of discovery has worked so well for the past 600 years. Why change it if it's not broken, right? And so she said that to us all the time. Don't settle. Don't settle. Find out what we want. Go out and find out what we want. And so that's what I thought I was doing. I'm gonna, I got to support my family. I got to do this, I got to do that. But that's what I thought I was doing. And I was, and then she became part of the 1990 Oka crisis, people who were in Ganesadage. And so that was a very traumatic summer, as you can well imagine. But there was a lot of research that was done leading up to it and afterwards. And I can't remember who the woman was who came into our community and did some research. But she talked about how Kahnawake leans towards traumatic or polarized thinking. And, we have all of these amazing ideas and all of these amazing resources and all of these amazing smart people in our lives and in our community. And we start a project and we build it and build it and build it and build it. And this was in 1991, I think. And then as soon as we get ready to implement, it either implodes or explodes. And we start fighting with each other. And that happened over and over and over again in my life, in my career. And I was like, man, how do we get past this? How do we change it? And the one thing that was missing from all of those shelved reports of all these amazing projects that failed was that we didn't trust each other. We didn't trust each other. We didn't have that connection, why community? What you asked Bradley, why community? He's coming from a place of great wounding and he's turning it into his strength. And he's turning it into what he wants in his life. That journey to reconnection, as you so eloquently put it. And, Kim said how, she wants to renew and deepen all of those personal connections and also community connections and nation connections and international, the whole world, the connection to everything. That's what relationship is. So when I realized that it was trust that was missing, it started me on a journey that took many, many years on a journey to find out what it was that I needed to be so that others could also be that as well. Yeah.
Amy, I think you wanted to add something.
Yes. Well, I'm going to do it in French to diverse the languages. Donc, je trouve ça tellement... on dirait que ça confirme tellement de choses que tout le monde dit parce que on veut tous, ça confirme que tout le monde a besoin de cette communauté-là. Tout le monde veut la retrouver d'une manière ou d'une autre, soit à la connexion à la culture, soit à la connexion à la communauté. Puis on dirait qu'à chaque fois que je l'entends, ça me confirme que ça m'encourage dans mon travail, puis ça m'encourage dans le cheminement que je suis en train de faire pour moi. Tu sais, comme Linda a dit, finalement, c'est un travail qu'on doit faire pour soi-même, mais tout est là. Tu sais, si on part du constat que chacun veut retrouver cette partie-là de soi, c'est déjà tellement grand, puis quand on part de là, après ça, je sais pas comment l'exprimer, mais c'est comme ça me confirme. Quand je suis en relation avec des gens, parce qu'on parle de relations, j'essaie maintenant de me dire qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour s'entendre parce que je sais qu'on veut la même chose. Puis, en tout cas, c'était juste ça. Je trouve juste ça beau d'entendre à chaque fois que ça confirme que mon sentiment est le même, que tout le monde veut la même chose. Puis, le chemin pour s'y rendre va être différent pour chaque personne, mais on veut tous la même chose.
I'll just say something really quickly to add to what Emmy said, and it comes from a mentor of mine, and her name is Loretta Afraid of Bear Cook, and she's from South Dakota. She's Oglala Sioux, and we used to travel all over the world to do ceremony and to visit Indigenous people all over the world. And whenever we would come up to these places where people were bumping into each other about how to do something, she would just say, always are good. Always are good. And we started, so our people move counterclockwise when we do ceremony, and her people move clockwise when they do ceremony. And so what we started to do was just do our own ceremonies at the same time in the way that we did it, which was completely opposite, to just reiterate and reconfirm that all ways are good, because if you look at what's under the ceremony, it's the same thing. We're all looking for the same thing, as Emmy so eloquently put it. We're all looking for the same thing. We're all looking for connection. We're all looking for community. We're all looking for, you know, relationship. And so it doesn't matter if you're Buddhist or Lakota or Innu or Mohawk or, you know, or, you know, what we're looking for underneath how we do it is the same.
Now, before I ask another question, did you, Kim or Bradley, did you wanna add to what we were just talking about? Go ahead, Kim.
Just kind of want to add that, you know, we're all confirming and affirming that, you know, that connection is something that is one of the key underlining components of how do we build healthy relationships, right? And when working with our communities, as Linda said, you know, always are good ways. And reaffirming that and hearing her even saying it, you know, brightens me to know that it's not just myself. And sometimes, you know, when people aren't ready and not willing to, you know, look at themselves or to look what's happening in their communities, it can be very, very frustrating. And knowing that our nation isn't the only nation that has challenges, and that resistance to somehow look at changing things and our perspectives, you know, that comes with and it's a whole new conversation, but that comes from being trauma informed and knowing our history. So the more that you can find out about your history and the impacts that it had on all of our nations, the better equipped you are going to be able to move forward in that healing journey and understanding what needs to happen in order for us to get to the place that we're looking to get in our next step. This is what I wanted to say.
Glad to come. Bradley, did you want to add something?
Would, but I think they took all my answers. Just kidding.
We're all connected in this way.
No, I just want to agree. You know, I even see it in my community. There's times where, you know, the community members are hesitant to, you know, accept change or, you know, see not the bigger picture, but you know, like it all stems from, you know, like the trauma and like the history that, you know, our people have been through. So, you know, I agree with everyone around the table here. You know, it's like that's one of the challenges, you know, I'm facing in the community is how do I like get over that step, is like how can I see how can I let the members see the bigger picture and, you know, see the good from it, basically.
English, Bradley. Yeah. And I think that's where we're going to go next. Like, because trust has been, you know, it's been mentioned by a bunch of participants that it's one of the key elements in relationships. Like we've just started to talk about why trusting is hard. And so we'll go there in 1 second, but I did want to just acknowledge that we have Yvette Belfleur who mentioned in the chat that it was really important for her to mention that the Mamit Inuit, the Inuit from the East, so people from Mikwajit, Unamin-Hipu, Mitakwan, Pakwa-Hipu, that they're still really practicing their tradition of hunting and their culture, and it's not lost. It's very much there. So Snachomit and Yvette for reminding us that this is the place where we start. We start from everything that is still there and very strong and very much alive. So yeah, that's a whole different place to start. So yeah, maybe we just jump into trust a little bit. And I guess my question would be, what are some of the ways or the things that have really helped build trust in the way that you work in community planning, but in other, like even in your other jobs now? Like, what are some of the things that you feel really help build trust?
I can kind of start with this one. It's kind of running off what Bradley's already mentioned. And to have that trust, you need to trust yourself, first of all. You really need to know who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. And is it to help that community? Is it to help your community? Is it to boost your own ego? Is it, so you really need to reflect on what your purpose is and why you're advocating for these changes that you would like to see in your community. And I think really knowing who you are and having that integrity, over time really becomes a positive thing when it comes to developing trust within your community itself. And ensuring that you listen to what people are saying. And if there's something that you can do to change that or to advocate for it, it doesn't matter how big or small it may be all the difference to that one individual or that one family. Right. So following through and proving that you're really listening to your community is a really, really good strategy, if you want to call it that. But maybe not even so much a strategy as that's like a really English word. But to have that value within your own self and to show and be respectful of that integrity is always there, and you are good for your word in whatever conversations maybe you may be having. And in that sense, it kind of eliminates, it may not completely eliminate it, but it may change that perspective of having trust and eliminating that awful word of fear and that fear of the unknown, or that fear of being vulnerable, and maybe allowing yourself to be vulnerable also at the same time. And maybe, sometimes disclosing some personal things within your life that you may have overcome and how you did it, whether it was through your culture and learning new ways of accepting and healing. Then that's something we really, really need to look within ourselves first and trust ourselves so that we can show that to other people.
Yeah, there's a lot in what you said, Kim, right? So to me, it sounded like you were saying, when you said like be clear on your purpose, trust yourself, it also sounded a lot like the necessity of starting with honesty. Like, be honest with yourself first so that you can be honest with other people. And then get to know who you are, get to know your own value, and like walk the talk. Integrity was definitely in there. And then also really the piece about listening. So if you're not listening to others, it's really hard for them to trust you, right? Because there's no space for them. So there was a lot in there already. And you touched on something that I think we'll go deeper into very soon, but the fear of the unknown, of being vulnerable. So why is that so present? Bradley, did you want to jump in? Or Linda? Or Emmy?
I was just gonna jump into the first question about trust, and I think like in my role as a communications officer, like one of the areas I'm working on is to build transparency between, the departments and the community members, the leadership with the members and the departments. So just, making sure that, everyone knows what's happening and why decisions are being made. Like for myself, I have a plan, to share, information more clearly to our members. Before, most of our information or decisions were mostly like reactive. Like we only made decisions when a big event happened, or we made decisions when a big issue is facing us, and there was really no long-term planning. So, so because there was no long-term planning, there was never that that uh, that that uh, I guess trust between members and leadership, because they didn't know what was going on and they weren't being involved, and that just like takes out trust right away. So, one of the key areas that I'm focusing on is, of course, building that trust and transparency between, all areas in the community. And it's easier said than done, and there's many ways and many tools we can use to tackle that. But I think for us, anyways, having good communication channels set in place to share all up-to-date information is good for any community. So for us, newsletters and social media is one of the best ways at the moment, but we're always finding different ways to reach the different areas in the community, youth, elders, men, women, they all take in information in different ways. So we have to, cater to those different groups in the community. So trust involves transparency for me.
I don't know. They've captured it all so well. I didn't finish the story of my mother. Like I just told the hard part. Well, not the hard part, but the beginning part. And what she used to say at the end of that lecture that she used to give us all the time is that, because if you do that, we can have anything we want. We can have anything we want, and it can be better than anywhere else in the world. And we just have to work together. And that's what she used to say all the time. She used to start off with the hard line, with the banging on the fists on the table, and saying we can't, don't accept, don't settle, because we can have anything we want. And what it makes me think of is, I think Kim said it really well, is identity. When we know from attachment theory and science and all of these things that people who know who they are able to better develop stronger and more secure attachment. And what does attachment even mean anyway? It means relationship. And so if you can have a solid foundation in who you are, what your identity is, then you can be more secure in your attachment, which is relationship. And so none of us have a perfect upbringing, right? None of us have raised our children perfectly, right? And so I like to look for tools that are easy to use and that we can just have on hand, and that take into consideration everything that both Bradley and Kim just said. And then you might laugh, but I love using Brené Brown's braving acronym. You guys know because I gave it to you in one of my classes, but I love it because it just so eloquently and succinctly says the things that you need in order to be trustworthy. Because it's easy to say there's no trust. My community has no trust. My family has no trust. My colleagues have no trust. There's no trust in this project. There's no trust here. There's no trust there. But what am I doing to be trustworthy? And it starts with identity, as Kim said so well. And it starts with knowing who you are and being able to be in relationship with others. And that requires vulnerability. Ooh, who wants to open themselves up to all that potential wounding, right? But the braving acronym is boundaries, reliability, accountability, the vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. And I mean, I'm not going to go into what all of those mean, but embodying those qualities and those characteristics are really integral to creating relationships that you want to have individually, collectively, with the land, with everything. I'm sure Brené Brown wouldn't mind if you use it.
I just want to add a little something because of everything that Linda said. Regarding trust, what really helped me is like seeing that we got to learn what trust is before we want to try to create it for ourselves or for people. And one of my amazing teachers who is right here, Linda, who's always reminding me, like, it starts with who you are. Like, I know that I'm a person that always struggle with trusting environments or trusting people. Or so how could I ever imagine to build secure spaces for people to come if even I don't know what trust is? Like, it doesn't make sense. So I had to learn all those things, and Linda's always there to remind me. The wound is the gift. Like, clearly I'm someone who wants community and is looking for it, but do I know how to do it? Like, I want it, but I'm not trusting it. So I had to do this whole, like, it's a never ending journey, but doing the looking what's inside and learning what trust is, like if it's braving from Brené Brown or just looking at what's there and what's stopping me from going to those places and thinking that like people from the community feels the same. Like if I feel like that, I have to learn it and do the work myself. It starts with me to then build spaces that allow people to feel secure. So I am grateful for Linda to always like whenever we're looking at the exterior, we're like switching it up. What's inside? Like what's stopping you? Like everything. It just starts with who we are and we see the world as we are. So if we see disconnect and we see lack of security, it's because we also feel that way. And we need to figure it out with what we have and then hopefully give it back to people who's around us. So thank you, Linda, for all of those teachings.
Yeah, that's so great. And I mean, if you think about the thing that I said about the projects imploding or exploding, it's as soon as people are triggered, they look to the outside to blame or to put responsibility on instead of taking it for ourselves, right? And I mean, not to say that we need to take on everything, but what's my responsibility here? You know, what is my responsibility here? Because that's all really the only thing we have control over, you know, and how vulnerable is that to say, ooh, I actually have responsibility here. And what does that mean?
Go ahead, Kim.
Want to kind of close this, not close it off, but to give my input on one more little thing. It's okay if you're not there yet. You know, we're all on our own personal journeys first, so it's really okay if you're not ready. But if you're questioning yourself and you're asking yourself, your true self, some questions, then you know what? It's starting, you know. You're opening up a little bit more, and that's one of the first steps in learning to trust yourself is to ask yourself those questions. And if they're not settling well in you, then you know there's some work to be done. But like I said, everybody is on their own path, and when you are ready, you're gonna know that you're ready. It's like I don't want to use the word epiphany, but it's or an enlightening, but at one point you're gonna become aware that wow, I'm looking at the world as well as myself through a totally different lens. And I'm happy with some of the things that I see, but I also know where work needs to happen. So respect that about yourself also and give yourself time to do these things that you need to do.
Miigwech, Kim. Brother, did you want to add something before I go? We have a comment that I want to bring in afterwards. Do you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh no, we can go to the comment.
All right. So we have a comment from Yvette. It's in French, so I'll do my best to translate it, and then I have a question that comes with the comment, I think. So Yvette wrote about confidence and trust when it comes to like a place of work. So she mentions that it's important between institutions that represent us and the First Nation. It's important to do some prevention and some awareness building work around cultural safety. And so, giving training should be one of the objectives so that, the organizations that work for them can provide like really culturally safe services. And so that's one of the elements that Yvette is bringing in. So again, Yvette. Yeah. Does anyone want to like just bounce off that or because otherwise I have a question that goes around it, but go ahead, Kim.
I'm going to quickly bounce on that one because, as mentioned, I work for First Nations Human Resources Development Commission of Quebec, and we work with 30 communities across the land of Quebec, and with many, many non-Indigenous companies, organizations, because we work in the labor market, right, and training. And one of the things that the commission has been doing for a few years now is collaborating and building partnerships with these other institutions and agencies and giving them cultural awareness workshops. So it is happening out there, and I just wanted to kind of let people know that work is happening on the land already, and it's happening within organizations and maybe not specifically in communities. I can't speak for anybody, but it is happening out there. There is cultural awareness and how do we onboard and develop better relationships and working relationships and trust at the end of the day.
Kim. Anything else people want to add on this topic?
I don't know this firsthand, but I do work with Christine Loft in the community trauma-informed training, and I think she was on this webinar last week, but she has done amazing work on onboarding and prevention and awareness and cultural awareness and all of these things with people who are coming into the community to do mental health work in Kahnawake. And she's not finished yet, so she would be a great resource if anybody wants to know how to do onboarding in a really comprehensive inclusionary way. She's a great resource.
Yeah, well, indeed, she is amazing. I'll just say. And yes, for those of you who were there last week, Christine was one of the panelists last week as well. We've talked a lot about the importance of getting to know who you are in order to feed trust in yourself and then trust also collectively. And it brought me to this place where comprehensive community planning has that built in. This is one of the first things we do when we start the process. It's to look at history, look at where we come from in order to know who we are. And so I think I'm curious, like, what are some of the things that you did when you were doing comprehensive or when you're doing it right now? Like, how do you build that in, this getting to know who you are collectively? Because we've talked about the importance of doing that individually, but there is a really important collective component, especially when we talk about trust collectively. So what are some of the things that you've done to create spaces where collectively you can start looking at who you are and where you come from?
I won't answer it fully because I have to think about it, but because it's a long time ago now. But what we did that was really effective, and again, our community is a lot different than a lot of the other communities in the region. 8,000 people is a lot different than, the rest of the, there's only 3 or 4 communities in Quebec that have large populations like that. But we created safe spaces. We created safe spaces that people could say whatever they wanted to say without fear of judgment or retribution or anything. And it had a huge impact, where people were just able to, talk about their health issues, talk about their families, and it had nothing to do with community planning, sorry. But it was a place where they could stay safe, and that evolved into something more. It evolved as with time went on. And so safe spaces is really important, because of everything that Kim said earlier, all of those things that Bradley said earlier, until you have those people looking internally rather than externally, at themselves and what they need, there's not really a sustainable way of continuing the work that we want to do, I think. And I don't want to, let me think about it more.
Can add to that, and I'm still thinking because for myself as well, it's been 5 years since I've or maybe 3. It's been a few years since I've worked in the community. But Linda is spot on when she says creating safe spaces, and part of that is also ensuring, and I know that I've heard this a few times already from Bradley, is to ensure that everybody has a voice. Ensuring that the people who may not say much, they may attend your meetings, they may attend your functions, but they may be the quiet ones. And sometimes these quiet ones are the people you want to approach later on to say, hey, or they might come and approach you privately. So you have to be open to the different types of sharing that people are willing to do, and allow them to space to reflect and to come back with a response, because they've really put a lot of thought into it. We all think, we all process differently. Understanding that is really important. And it doesn't matter what age you are. And, there's different ways of structuring activities so that you're getting the voice of the little ones in your community. You're getting the voice of your preteens. You're getting the voice of your youth, your young adults, your 30, 40-year-olds, and then getting up into, call myself a senior. I'm in my 50s, but you know, getting into the older demographic, and then our seniors and our elders and those knowledge keepers. So making sure that whatever you plan and to create that trust in that community, you need to have that inclusiveness, and things need to be done as a collective. Maybe not all at the same time. So there's a lot of work that has to happen on the ground first, but ensuring that you don't leave anybody out. And it doesn't matter what their story is, they have a story to tell.
Yeah, if I can just jump in as well. I've hosted a few focus groups in the community at this point, trying to get the voice from the community, and these areas, the shared planning spaces, uh, like it was already kind of explained by Kim, you have to make it welcoming, everyone should feel safe to share ideas, we all have a story to tell, and even if like I'm just throwing out all these words that have already been kind of said, inclusiveness, I always have to make sure, all the voices are heard, elders, youth, men, women. Recently, we had a youth focus group on collecting ideas from the different groups in the community that will be put towards the health and wellness 5-year community plan. And, we met with the, community members, youth, elders, and we were about to move on, but then we forgot the big area that we didn't get in the community members focus group was the voice of the men. And especially in a health plan, you know, men don't speak about their, mental health and things like this. So, if we're making a 5-year plan for our community and the men's voice is not being heard, I don't think I'm doing my due diligence of, trying to get that inclusiveness of the community. And for my end, we can always have these focus groups, but to make something come from it, it has to be very, engaging and interactive, and the best way to do that is using, our traditions, one of my next focus groups, I want to focus around community potluck. So I want to integrate more of our culture into these, focus groups. Have a focus group on, storytelling, ceremonies, include our ceremonies. We should be looking at, our traditional ways of how we made decisions in the past, and how can we include our traditional ways with the modern ways we make decisions with. And I always say, to get the community engaged is, having that transparency. Any decisions we make in the community have to be clear. Updates that we give to the community members, clear as possible, and it should be shared on a consistent basis. So, like for me, like having an area for, members to come and share, it's all about connection for me. And, if we're all connected, if you can't, well, there's a reason why the word unity is in community. If there's no unity, you don't have a community. So, I always think back on that little saying. So, it takes a community to, to, to connect, basically. Anyway.
Yeah, the only two things I would add on to what Bradley just said was is usually comprehensive community planners are overworked and trying to do everything themselves. Don't do that. And try to get support from wherever you can. Leadership is really important to support you, not just with their words, but with action, with finances, with resources. Don't recreate the wheel. I'm so excited for the website to come on, because I know Emmy will have a great toolbox of stuff that is going to be in there. So don't recreate the wheel. Call Kim, call me, call Emmy, call Catherine, call somebody and say, what did you do for this? What did you do for that? And everybody's happy to help. Like, we're creating community with this CCP network that we have. We're creating community everywhere we go. So don't recreate the wheel. Make sure you have support and piggyback everything. Like I said, we're doing this work alone a lot of the time. And so if you're having a men's health thing, like, add surveys. If you're doing racers for health with the elementary kids, like, survey the parents or have an activity with the kids. If you're doing a planning session somewhere, have a booth in there that talks about CCP. If you're, the examples are endless, but piggyback onto everything. That way you save money and you get more exposure to more of the voices that you need to hear.
And also, just to say, be as creative as you want. It's okay not to hold a focus group in an enclosed building where there's no connection to ground, and like Linda says, piggyback off of activities that are happening outside. This is where you're going to build even stronger relationships with other departments, and they're more willing to help out when they understand what the purpose is of developing your CCP. Ask the community, where do you want to meet? Not everybody wants to meet in the community hall or in the band office conference room. Ask them where they would like to meet, and then you can develop a plan where you can, have your meetings, if you want to call them meetings or gatherings, whatever you want to call it, because words are really important. to a place like we keep saying where your community members are going to feel safe. So you need their feedback. Where do you want to do this? Maybe we can organize a 1 day canoe trip in the summer, with a certain demographics, maybe your youth, and take them on a canoe trip and squat on an island somewhere and make a fire and sit around and have a conversation. It does not have to be formal with PowerPoints and what that I keep saying, that westernized way of doing things. But if you can find a balance between the two, it's really important, and your community is really going to know that you're actually listening to them. Some of this stuff I wish I knew earlier.
And some of the things are like helping me even now, like what Linda was saying, don't do everything, and piggyback off the events that are happening in the community. And for a time there, I felt like I have to be here, I have to be there, I have to be here. And then it made me very, very frustrated that, the goal that I have for the community is not being, met by other departments and things like that. So, like, I guess it's learning to, like like you said, like piggyback and look for the support from, anywhere you can. And that's something that I'm just starting to learn, this month only. So, from going forward, that gives me, a sense of ease. So so miigwech for that comment, Linda and Kim.
I'm not facilitating, but can I just say one thing before Emmy goes? It can be so disheartening. Don't get disheartened. It can be so disheartening because, like you said, oh, I'm trying to be here and here and there and there, and they're not buying in. So don't get disheartened. Just, you can't do it all. Find support wherever you can, like I said. But the one idea that I wanted to mention that really was successful in our community is extended family visits. Like, get an extended family together, grandmothers, mothers, fathers, aunties, uncles, kids, everybody, and buy them dinner. And it can be at a restaurant, or it can be in somebody's home. It can be anywhere. And when you have a consultation or an engagement session and you get 8 people, you're like, ugh. But if you get 15 or 20 people and they're all in the same family and they're comfortable to speak in this forum and you feed them, it's more like visiting and you get all the data. And so it's really a nice way to do it. Sorry, Emmy.
Go for it, Emmy, and then we'll go to Kim.
Je veux juste parler quelque chose que Bradley a mentionné qui m'a touchée, puis ça ramène beaucoup à la question qui était pourquoi c'est important de regarder le passé, regarder l'histoire, mais ultimement regarder qui qu'on est. Puis Bradley l'a mentionné parce que pour commencer à faire les choses à notre manière, puis c'est dans les moments où que, mettons, je suis en territoire, où je suis dans un cercle, où il y a des enfants, où il y a des aînés, tu sais, les moments où tu as vraiment l'impression qu'on incarne exactement qu'est-ce que notre culture est supposée être, que là, je réalise qu'est-ce qui est important, je réalise qu'est-ce qui va nous guider. Ça met vraiment tout en relation de quand on fait les choses à partir de qui qu'on est, d'où l'importance de regarder l'histoire, de regarder nos moyens de gouvernance traditionnels, de regarder comment on faisait nos cérémonies, de regarder qui était là, pourquoi, les rôles de chacun. Puis c'est aussi, une dame en a beaucoup appris par rapport au rôle de chacun, puis pourquoi c'est important d'avoir ces rôles-là. C'est qu'à ces moments-là, ça donne tellement le pourquoi qu'on fait les choses. Tu sais, ça vient vraiment les ancrer parce que là, on est comme, ah, c'est ça. C'est pour ça qu'on doit travailler, c'est pour ça qu'on doit avancer, c'est ça qu'on doit protéger, c'est qui qu'on est, puis comment on fait les choses, puis il faut tellement se réapproprier parce que malheureusement, on est dans un système qui nous a tellement obligés à oublier que maintenant, la même chose qui fait qu'on veut toute que je sais qu'on veut toute la même chose, c'est aussi qu'on aimerait retrouver ça. C'est aussi ça, c'est retrouver nos manières de faire qui ont fonctionné tellement bien à travers des millénaires, puis maintenant les adapter, puis repartir de là. Puis je trouve ça cool parce que c'est Bradley qui l'amène pas que les autres l'amènent pas, là, mais que Bradley, il le mentionne, puis là, je suis genre, ah, j'aime tellement ça, entendre ça, puis c'est ce qu'on dit, oui, puis après ça, c'est, si on peut faire les choses à partir de là, ça fait juste, ça fait du bien.
Merci. Vas-y, Kim. Go ahead, Kim.
One of the things we did do in our community, and it was beautiful, was there are like-minded people in your community, and they're already ahead of the game, and they're ready to plan, and they're ready to commit time to this. You know, do a call out. Have that regular committee come together on a regular basis, and and that's that accountability and that transparency at the same time, but you're always getting feedback from other individuals in your community, and you're not sitting there thinking by yourself, okay, what am I going to do next? What's our next steps? And we were very fortunate in Quebec that I had a committee of about 7 or 8. Couple may have come in and out just because of schooling and whatever. But if you get that committed team, it lessens your workload. You have the support you need. The word gets spread even in larger numbers because they're talking about it also. So if you can get a dedicated team on board with you, I would highly suggest that. And I'll say it again, they were a phenomenal team that I worked with, who were there from day one until I left, and I couldn't commend them for anything, but the awesome work they did.
And yeah, I agree with Kim. Having some kind of a team, committee put in place for LPFN. We're trying to take the route that Francine did in Kirigan and have the U Council serve as the CCP team. And that's what my goal for the U Council and LPFN, what their how can they contribute to the community? And I think being a CCP team would contribute them as well. But since they're a very, very new council, and they're just going through training, and I really, really hope that they become committed, and that's the word that I'm really, really looking for, and that I want to stress from what Kim said, committed. Right now, the U Council's members, for me, I don't feel like they're as committed as they should be, but maybe that's something that, we have to work on as a council first before, I ask them, to contribute to the CCP. So, I really think, the youth in the community, is the best voice for any kind of CCP team or committee, because they're the voice that's going to drive, the community forward for the next 30, 40, 50 years. So I'm always pushing for, youth leadership. And I think CCP is a great foundation for any kind of youth leadership in the community. So for me, I really want to see youth more involved in CCP. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Bradley. Anyone want to add anything at this point? Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
It's just a resource, but if you want to understand more about organizing people, power, change, I will send Catherine the link and she can share it with everyone who is online. But it just gives you, and I mean, it's not something, it's not the Bible that you have to follow, but it opens your mind up to when working with individuals and big groups of people and building all of those things that we're talking about today. So it's organizing people, power, change. But I will share that with Catherine for all of you.
Miigwech, Kim. And before we go on break, I wanna say a couple of things to our 30+ participants who are still here. First, thank you so much for being here. And if you want to share either tools that you use or comments that you have, feel free to write them in the chat or ask questions. We'll be happy to weave them in, and we would love to also learn from your experience. We're very aware that each and every one of you is either doing some awesome planning work in their community or their organization, or has done some in the past, or is participating in some that's being done. So thank you all for being here. Before we go to break, we've talked a lot about creating safe spaces, and we've mentioned quite a few things that help us feel safe, right? And so among the things that were mentioned, Bradley mentioned the importance of transparency, and for people having the information beforehand so that they can start thinking about it, and they can feel like they're arriving and they're feeling a bit more prepared. We've talked a lot about everybody having a voice, and the idea of inclusivity and making sure that everyone has a place and a role and a space in what we're doing. We've talked about the importance of doing things on the land, and starting from our stories and the food and the ceremony, having decision making that is really rooted in who you are. We've given great examples of how sometimes just going through extended family and food really helps people feel comfortable and feel at ease enough to share. And so before we go to break, I would love if participants, not our panelists, because they've done a great job of this already, although they can participate if you want, but all of you participants out there, if you would share in the chat, maybe one thing that helps you or your community feel safe when you're doing these kinds of collective processes. So we'll give you time to write in the chat. Welcome back from break to those of you who are already back. To those of you who aren't here yet, we invite you to gently make your way back to this room. I'm looking at the chat, and there are definitely some people who started writing in the chat some of the things that would help them and their community feel safe as they're doing their collective work. Bradley, there is Cedric Gray-Lahu who mentioned that he gave the link actually in the chat to a research project that addressed a lot of what you talked about the youth, and how they feel their voices aren't taken seriously by leadership. And he also mentions how important it is to work with the decision-making entities to involve youth at all levels of the decision-making process. So if you want to look at what he shared, the link is directly in the chat. Yeah, and I'm hoping I don't know if you two know each other, but I think you should get in touch if you don't. And maybe I can share your emails to each other, but I think both of you have been doing some really, really awesome work around making sure that youth voices are heard. I'm looking at the chat, and there are some, if I forget, I also shared Brené Brown's Braving acronym, the link to it that Linda talked about. And I have the French version of it somewhere, but I apologize, I couldn't find it during the break. And so I will do my best to email it to participants afterwards, or reach out to me, and I'll send it to you if you want the French version. Around feeling safe, Yvette Defla also mentioned that it would be important for her and her community to feel safe if employees from organizations could get training around First Nations reality, the thought processes, the culture, traditions, the way of life. And she says she knows there are already other organizations that do give like awareness training to their employees, but she said it's something that she would feel that she needs, so that she doesn't feel she has to fight for the realities of their beliefs all the time. And so we hear you, Yvette, and we do hope that this happens in your organization for sure. It is essential. There is Julie from Maestria who also mentioned that it would be important to raise awareness of the organization's employees and all other community organizations and even citizens. She'd love to have them gain more awareness around the community's history, have more access to language classes, have more the importance of culture be really highlighted, and all of that while being, you know, respectful of everyone. But she said it would be important as well. So those are some of the things that people have shared around feeling safe. And if you've got other ideas on what you and your community need to feel safe, please feel free to write them in the chat, or if you've got other questions and comments, would be more than happy to involve you in the discussion. And because we're talking about culture, my next question will be for Kim. Last fall, Kim at our regional planning meeting, she gave us some really, I want to say deep and rich teachings around some of the Anishinaabe teachings. And we asked her if she'd be comfortable to share what she wanted to share of these teachings with us today. And so, Kim, I'll let you go ahead. Any questions?
Kathleen. I'm going to try and make this as short as possible. It's 3:20 already, so I'm not going to go deep into everything. But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about these seven grandfather teachings and, you know, what is their impact when working with community and building relationships and doing community planning, right? And just a quick overview of the seven areas. You know, when we talk about wisdom and the beaver that's associated with it, you know, it basically allows us to encourage informed decision making. You know, the beaver is known for having that wisdom, right, and taking everything into consideration before decisions are actually made or a plan is set in action. We talk about love, and love is so important, not just for yourself, but for everybody around you. And how do we embody all of this? You know, and that's associated with the eagle, of course. And, you know, the eagle fosters compassionate relationships and strengthening unity and inclusivity. And these are a lot of the words that we've already been using today. But if you can kind of go back to those teachings themselves, they have a lot of lessons to be learned. And whether you have been able to embody them yourself, you know, learning about them and being able to live that life, and we all make mistakes, and we're all always in that learning journey, so we're not going to get it right the first time, the second time, or the third time. But as long as that is set as a value system for you, it's really going to be beneficial at the end of the day. We talk about respect and the buffalo, and that in itself, you know, the value behind that is promoting mutual understanding, cultural appreciation, and having responsible leadership, you know. So just to share those concepts with other people and your leadership as well, you know, bringing back that tradition and those stories is really, really important. We talk about bravery and the bear and how, you know, that supports courage to address our challenges and our obstacles and to advocate for things that we know are right. And sometimes that fear comes in, but if you can have that courage to do that, you know, you can embrace change in a more positive manner. Um, Another one would be in different cultures, it's either the Sabe or it's the Raven, and that in itself builds transparency in your local government, maybe with entities outside your community when it comes to government governance and planning, and it also helps to create trust within your community. Um, Humility, the wolf, you know, they often say, you know, watch videos on wolves and the resilience and how they work together. Although they may be in the back somewhere, they're survivors, right? And it encourages that collaborative decision making once again, and ensuring that there's value in everybody's voice. You know, wolves work together. That's why they've been around forever. You know, they tried to get them to disappear in Yellowstone Park. Look at that story and how they brought them back and how they've just multiplied in numbers. And that's because they support one another and they're not afraid to have that voice when it comes to making decisions. The last one, of course, is the turtle. And our turtle upholds our accountability. That's a big word for us, right? We need to be accountable for our words and our actions. And in a sense, that will instill that integrity. We're always talking about integrity. How do we do that? And in the long run, you're enforcing long-term trusting relationships. And how does that correlate to relationships, planning, trust? It emphasizes respect. It emphasizes honesty and love. It fosters strong interpersonal and intergenerational connections, knowing who we are. Um, our decision making is grounded in wisdom and humility, ensuring that we're being culturally appropriate, that we're going to develop sustainable plans and ensure that we have an inclusive initiative throughout this whole process of comprehensive community planning. So it also really reinforces that trust and that development of trust. So everything is rooted in truth. There's transparency and consistency. Consistency is so important. And that's essential when it comes to strengthening our community resilience and our own self-determination. Um, that best practice, how do we bring that all into our best practices, And it comes through holistic governance, integrating our indigenous knowledge systems into leadership and decision making and overall planning. Um, it allows us to be collective and ensuring that we have intergenerational learning and like mentorship for continuity of our cultural traditions and on our value system. And that cultural revitalization, embodies us to practice more and to become more educated, and which in turn, affects our health and our overall development. So that's just a short little blurb. I know it's a lot to hear, but there will be a recording. But to really, really look at the 7 grandfather teachings and why that value system is so important to, the Indigenous communities across the world, and we know that even in non-Indigenous areas now, you hear about the non-Indigenous population saying, you know what, we need to go back to that value system that the First Nations people have followed for time immemorial, and it's something that we need to learn from. So if you can embody that and embrace it and advocate for it in your communities and within yourself and your families and your friends, it's work, but it's so I don't want to say benefiting, it's not the word. It's empowering, to an individual to really understand who you are and what values you truly stand behind. So that's basically what I wanted to share about the 7 grandfather teachings, literally in a nutshell.
Wow, miigwech Kim. There are indeed layers upon layers upon layers of wisdom and teachings. I'm sure like we can re-listen to the recording quite a few times, and every time like follow a different thread and what it teaches us about ourselves. And I love that you're encouraging people of all origins to look at that, because ultimately they're values, and values are meant to be embodied through who you are. Like, what does respect look like from who you are? What does humility look like from who you are? And who you are is a function, again, my teachers here on the screen, I am quoting you all, but like culture is a manifestation of the land that you walk on, right? And so that's also important to remember. Anyone else want to add something before I steer us in a slightly different direction, but I think really important one? Anyone want to add anything? Yes, go ahead, Linda.
Just something really quickly that I thought of on the break. I don't know if anybody from Akwesasne is on here, but they have a program with the health center Ogisto Horn is working with McGill University and all of the residents and that come into the hospital or the healing center in Akwesasne have to go through a 6-week onboarding process, and they have to do mentoring where they visit basket makers and healers and traditional people and all these different people to do exactly what, I forget who it was who talked about it, maybe Yvette, to really get an idea of where our worldview comes from, what our thought processes are, not just an onboarding, say that these are Indigenous people and this is the land they live on, but like where we're truly coming from. And so these doctors have said what an amazing, rewarding, and beneficial process it's been to do that. So that's an idea too, is to bring professionals or whoever's being onboarded into your community, have them do like a mentoring program. It's a huge project, and it's in partnership with McGill, but something smaller could maybe benefit different communities.
Yeah, and yeah, go ahead, Kim, of course.
No, just add a little bit more to those teachings, just kind of to clarify what those animals represent. It won't take me long, 2 minutes, if that. I talked about the beaver and wisdom, and the beaver, I said it quickly, but beavers demonstrate resourcefulness. We are so resourceful and intelligent, and in a sense, it allows us to create our own sustainable environments, right? The eagle represents unconditional love, and it carries our prayers to the creator. He carries our prayers to the creator, and that symbolizes our deep connection to our own spiritual connection, right? The buffalo respect, he sacrificed himself. The buffaloes sacrificed themselves, right? And why did they do that? They did that to provide for our people. And at the end, the teaching it gives us is respect for life and the environments that we live in. That sense of balance. The bear encourages embodying strength and the ability to face challenges while still protecting our families and our communities. The seb, or the raven, teaches us to be true to ourselves and to be true to others, and at the same time embracing our own authentic identity. The wolf, as I mentioned, I love wolves. They thrive in packs. They teach the importance of teamwork, humility, and putting the needs of the community first before sometimes even ourselves. We got to think big. And the final one is our turtle, of course. And we've heard many stories about the teachings of the turtle, and it's about life and this earth and what's been given to us. And it symbolizes truth and wisdom and our journey of understanding. So if we can embrace all of these values and all of these teachings, um, it will open doors and it'll open eyes and it'll allow you to look at the world and the lives that we lead in a more positive manner, where we feel better about things at the end of the day. And why are we doing what we're doing? It's because of these true values, right? So I just want to kind of add a little bit more to that. Thank you.
Kim. And I was like, we're very aware that we can literally spend days like sitting here together and learning from each other for these teachings. Like it's a lifelong journey. I don't think we can ever be done exploring what each of these things mean and how we embody them throughout our lives. So miigwech so much for sharing them, and also for all the work that you're doing and reconnecting to them and embodying them, right? Like you and everyone on this call, like whatever the values are from your culture and your nation, like thank you for embodying them and having this courage. Speaking of courage, the next place where I wanted to bring us, and I asked permission from Linda at the break, because this wasn't somewhere that we had planned to go. But I mean, we've talked about trust, and we've talked about safety, and we've talked about how to foster them and build them and embody them. And we've touched a little bit on attachment because it's important. But I did want to go to a place where we actually really often go in relationship. We don't always acknowledge it. We don't usually know what to do with it. But I'm talking about ruptures in relationship. And so I'm not just talking about like ruptures in the romantic relationship. I'm talking about ruptures in work relationships or collective processes, because they will happen. It's not if, it's just when. So Linda, what do you want to teach us about ruptures and how to repair them?
They are inevitable in every relationship, with the land, with our kids, with our parents, with our family, with our colleagues, with our friends. They are inevitable. It is just the nature of relationship, you know, and I think about we did a training with Jane Middleton Moss, you know, and it was on sexual assault and sexual abuse and that kind of stuff. But something that she said to me really stayed with me. And she talked about intimacy. And this is specific to romantic relationships, but it's true for everything, you know, and, you know, when you're in that honeymoon phase and everything's wonderful, and then you have your first fight and or a red flag shows up and you're like, oh, that's it. You know, and you're done and you go on your merry way. And then your next relationship, you get to that same point again, and then you're done and you're on your merry way. And the next relationship, same place, and you're done and you're on your merry way. And you never grow past that place, regardless of the relationship that you're in. And so what she said is that true intimacy, you know, true vulnerability, true intimacy is created when you can move past those red flags, those ruptures, those conflicts, you know, and by doing so, you create the depth in the relationship because you've actually did the work to move past what was in your way and you went deeper into the relationship. And that's why long-term relationship, it's deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. I'm not to say that it's not easy, that it's easy, it's not. But if you never do the work to move past those challenges, you never get deeper in the intimacy of a relationship. She said it much better than that. but it really stood with me. It really stayed with me, I mean. And the answer to your question is it depends. You know, because every relationship is different and everything is contextual. And I think that's the beauty of this human existence, is that everything is contextual and there's so many ways to see everything. And I think knowing that and being willing to stand in that vulnerability of what all of that is, you know, all ways are good, you know, all perspectives are valid, you know, all of these things can exist with each other when you're trying to find your way through. Does that make for an easy relationship and community engagement? No. But it gets easier when you practice it with yourself. And so if you have an argument with your partner, you know, and then you know, as Brené Brown says, you know, integrity, responsibility, accountability, you know, apologize and make amends. You know, that goes a long way. If there's responsibility there, you know, what are your boundaries? Were your boundaries crossed? Did you cross somebody else's boundaries? What's happening? What's the situation? What's the context? What's the relationship? You know, did you breach some sort of integrity? Were you not honest? Was the other person not honest? You know, there's no one answer, but the willingness to go to those depths and to be vulnerable in those places where you need to take responsibility for your role in this is all you can do. And is it always successful? No, but it helps you. Once you start practicing, it helps you get to the place where you can recognize which relationships are the ones that you want to pursue and which ones are not. And that's a really short answer that probably doesn't help anybody. but it does, because it really brings the focus back on ourselves again, because that's really all the control that we have is with ourselves. What do you think? You got more?
I'm grateful. I mean, okay, I'm partial. I was also there at the training with Jane Middleton Moss, and I really appreciate that you brought it to this place of responsibility, because to me, it loops back to the empowering that Kim and Bradley were talking about, right? Because sometimes we can feel responsibility as being this thing that is gonna like crush us, but it's actually also this thing that stands us up. And so I love that you bring into that, and also that it really is contextual. Like sometimes it does involve apologizing, sometimes it does involve repairing in many ways, but also sometimes it's about just like withholding your boundaries and saying, this is where my boundaries are and this is where you can meet me. So it will look very different depending on each situation.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying, sorry, I think it's worth saying that, boundaries are not walls that we put up to not let, it's showing them where to come in, where it's okay for them to enter into this relationship. And I think that is a huge difference. People's like, this is my boundary. And it's like this, when they talk about, this is my boundary. How does that feel? And they say, well, this is what my boundary is. And here, the door is right here. You come in right here, but not over here. And then you're not sacrificing yourself, and you're loving yourself, and you're holding yourself in a way that, has a lot of integrity. And so you're more at peace with yourself. And when you're more at peace with yourself, you're more authentic in who you are. And that's, I think, a good thing.
Indeed. I guess my other question, like the other part of my question is how do we do that in a collective setting? And I've witnessed you and Kim do that, and me. Bradley, we haven't worked in this sense yet together, so I haven't, but I'm sure you have as well. But like I've witnessed most of you do that in a collective setting. And usually it just starts by actually being willing to acknowledge what's there. Even when it's hard, like acknowledging that the rupture even exists. Are there other things that you want to, like in a collective setting, how we do that?
Well, calling the elephant that's in the room an elephant is great. I agree. And when you're in a collective setting, if we're talking about Indigenous ways of learning as well, preventative is the way to go. When we're talking about our physical health, our mental health, all of our health, preventative is the way that we do it in Indigenous culture. And setting up I don't want to say rules, but setting up how we want to be together in a group and giving the responsibility to the group. We want to be honest. We want to be respectful. What are all the things that were on the thing earlier? We want accountability. We want support. We want trust. We want all of these things in this group, whatever it is that we're doing. And is there consensus with these things? Is there one that we need to take out? Is there others that we need to add? And once you have that agreement that this is how we want to be with each other, then the responsibility is with the group, and we don't have to take all of it on for ourselves, right? Bradley, we don't have to take it all on ourselves. We can have the group take responsibility for how they want to be with each other. And if something comes up, a conflict or a breach or, a rupture, then we'll be like, hey, hang on a second. Let's just hang on for 2 seconds. What is it that's happening here? Is everybody okay? Does everybody feel safe? Can we stop for a second? However you want to do it. And then say, are we following the agreement that we put for ourselves? And like, what do we want to do about it? So it doesn't have to be a free-for-all, but it also doesn't have to be one person's responsibility to resolve it in the collective. It is helpful to know how to facilitate and not to, like I said, have it become a free-for-all where there's blame and judgment and all of those things that bring it to the external. And so a good facilitator will bring it to have each people talk about, the feeling statements, the I statements, and what is it that I want or I desire in a group setting, and not having a you did this or you did that. So I statements, the feeling statements, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? And then looking for consensus or agreement or something in the group. And I think that goes a long way, but it takes time. It takes time.
Yeah. Yes. Does it ever take time?
Can I tell them that story that we said this morning about the memorandum that I sent you in December or whatever for December 2022?
Yes, please.
You're like, what is she gonna say? As I said earlier, we've been teaching this group of 18 people to be community trauma-informed trainers for the past 2.5 years, and Catherine and Emmy are part of that group. And somebody was looking for the date that we started, and so Catherine was looking through her files. And she found the memo that I originally sent out to say that, welcome, we're inviting you to the first of 2 week-long sessions to learn how to be a trauma-informed community trainer. 2.5 years later, it was not just 2 week-long sessions. After we did the second session, we realized, wow, this is going to take a lot of time. This is really needed, and it's going to take more time than we thought, and it's really worth it. So we spent 2.5 years together with the 2018 plus 3, 21 of us, learning to be with each other and learning through our own ruptures and repairing and learning and conflicts and practicing and crying and laughing, how to be in relationship with each other. And these are 21 people who want to be together and who want to do this work. And it was hard. So when we're talking about communities that don't know how to do this and who don't have the tools, it's going to take time, and it's going to take patience, and it's going to take people who want it. And so don't knock yourselves out, or don't, judge yourselves for not getting as far as you think you should be getting. Because, when I talk to people now, I was like, oh, we could have gotten so much further, or I could have done more, or whatever, and I talk to people saying, they tell me like, I talked about my kidney cancer in one of those sessions, and that changed my life. And so maybe it wasn't as in terms of community planning, it didn't answer the questions that we were doing to engage the community in community planning, but they felt safe enough to talk about their health and to release those emotions, which was probably like helpful in their healing process, which, because they've now healed, and I see them on the roads today. Yesterday I saw them, or the other day, with all the snow plowing the snowbanks, and I'm like, wow, they're still here and they're doing their thing, and the community is a better place. And it may not have happened the way we thought it was going to happen, but it happened, and so don't underestimate the power of connection and what long-term and widespread effects it can have on people. And it may not go in the direction that you think it's going to go, that'll fill all the boxes and fill all the reports the way Indigenous Services wants it to be filled, but it's going to go far.
Hey. Before I go into a short summary and then ask you each of you the final question, is there anyone that wants to add something, or no? Go ahead, Emmy.
3 hours is not enough.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh. It's hard to sum this one up because there is so much here, but I will do my best to bring together a couple of the strands of the basket that we wove together this afternoon. we really started from a place of connection and reconnection, and how the journey looks different for each of us, how some parts are easier and some parts are harder. But one way or another, the part around getting to know yourself at your own pace, and hopefully with as little judgment as you can bring in, is really essential. And when we say getting to know yourself, it's individually, like yourself, your identity, where you come from, how you relate, but also collectively, who are you as a family, as a community, as a clan, as a nation, like who are you? And then in order to do that, it's really important to be able to create spaces for yourself and collectively, spaces that feel safe, whatever that looks like for you, safe physically, emotionally, spiritually, culturally, of course, mentally, and also like find ways, like what does it really mean to be trustworthy for yourself so that you can be trustworthy together as well. We talked about the role of planning coordinators, but anyone who's coordinating some collective processes in fostering that trust and embodying those values. Also, they need to do this together. Like, don't do this. You can't do any of this alone. We do need each other to support each other. We need our teams, but also for that reflection back to us, right? And so being in relationship is actually really essential to any of this. We talked a lot about empowerment and responsibility. We talked about all ways are good, and then Kim brought in the grandfather teachings as one of the ways that has inspired and helped people really embody who they are, and how each of us can embody those values from our own unique identity. Then we talked about the importance of preventative approaches and setting up collective norms of collective agreements, and then when we've agreed on that, giving the responsibility back to the group. And we've talked about different ways that we can help each other, keep each other safe through this, whether it's through transparency or making sure everyone has a voice and being real inclusive, but also having onboarding processes and mentoring each other when we have people from different cultures and different backgrounds coming in together, or when we have young people that are starting to work and they want to feel good in what they're doing, and or elders that are there and we want them to feel good too, and people our age, 40s and 50s, we're not seniors yet. And we want us to feel safe too. And so as I wrap this up, before I ask my final question, I just want to remind people that whatever kind of planning you're doing, if you're doing from who you are, you're doing Indigenous planning. That is what Indigenous planning is. It's planning from who you are, as a person from the nation that you are. And so we're grateful that you agreed to be here today. And I guess my last question to our panelists is a two-part question. Which little part of your broad visions do you want to share with participants today as we close this around relationships and planning? And then what do you hope they do going forward? What do you hope for participants going forward? Go ahead, Kim.
Be authentic. Be truthful to yourself. It instills a sense of empowerment in you, and you will shine bright, and other people will see that and they will feel that. And it's that ripple effect. You set a good example, best practices, do what you need to do. And remember that this process of comprehensive community planning, it's ongoing and it's ever changing. And it's okay to have to step back and recheck and make sure that you recheck and you get that feedback and allow for your community to have that voice. And of course, when you have that voice and creating those spaces where they feel comfortable to express their feelings, their wants, their needs. Short and sweet.
That's a great invitation. Bradley, what part of your vision around relationship do you want to share with us as we close this up, and what do you invite participants to do moving forward?
Well, I explained that in LPFN, the way we approach each other or we plan, it's very reactive. We only make decisions when there's a major problem, and I I I think there should be an approach where it's community driven, long term, and based on your community's values. So for me, our values in LPFN is leadership must include everyone's voice, and especially youth voice. If you build that relationship with the youth, that's the best relationship I think you can have with the community. Because the youth are going to be the one driving our language and our culture moving forward, and they're going to be in the center of it. So I guess to kind of end off, when I started planning, I had no idea what to do, but I've learned to start small, kind of I've learned to now piggyback off of what others are doing, so attend existing meetings, ask questions, have little surveys after community events, talk to the elders and youth, get their voice included as much as you can. And if you're already a planner, I stressed it a lot today, but be transparent with all of your community. So share information as much as you can. But for me, I like to listen first. I like to sit down and hear what they want, and then make that try to make that a reality. So for me, get the youth involved and listen to all voices. Anyway.
I like that. You are already everything that you need. We were born with everything that we need. We can sit here and teach you how to write a proposal, or learn how to do community engagement and the details of that, but you already have, and you already are everything that you need. And bring it. That's all I got.
That's a great invitation. Encore. Emmy, anything you want to add?
À chaque webinaire de cette série de webinaires, ça me rappelle exactement ce qui est le plus important, c'est de s'asseoir puis de parler de qui qu'on est, qu'est-ce qu'on veut, de l'avenir. Puis quand je pense à nos ancêtres, je pense que c'est exactement ça qu'ils faisaient. Au lieu de tout le temps, comme Bradley dit, prendre des décisions, tu sais, qu'il y a une étape avant, puis c'est de s'asseoir, puis c'est de se parler de tout ça. Puis là, on l'a fait en 2 heures et demie, mais ça pourrait comme durer des jours. Puis j'ai l'impression que quand on s'assoit, puis on fait exactement cette chose-là. Fait que c'est un cadeau. Genre, cette série-là, je trouve que c'est juste un cadeau.
Merci, Amy. Whew. Well, as we finish this today, I want to really thank each of you, friends and teachers and mentors, for everything that you've shared today, but for all of the years and the times that we've been in relationship, and hopefully this continues for a long time. And for each of you that was here today, we didn't see or hear your voices, but we knew you were there, and each of you was important. And we hope that you take what you heard today and that you continue to embody this in your own ways, in your communities, in your organizations, and your families. And if after this anything comes up and you wanna write us or call us, we'll be more than happy to hear from you. And we invite you to share something that you learned today about yourself or about your community or about in general with someone that you trust at the end of the day, whether it's someone who is human or not. Go hang out with a tree if that's the coolest thing. That's my personal thing. Or a rock, anyone you want. But we really invite you to give yourself the time and space to integrate some of what you experienced today. We really also invite you to join us next week. The next webinar is on roles, responsibilities, and governance with 3 young panelists. So we have Gatsuzio Spicer from Kahnawake. We also have Darren Germain, who's originally from Meshtoyats, but he's been living and working in the Abitibi First Nation. And we also have Zachary White Duck from Kitigan-Zibi. And so 3 amazing young humans who are doing beautiful work around rethinking governance and what that might look like and how to embody roles and responsibilities today. So we really invite you to be there on the 26th, same times, 1:30 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. And before I close, I really want to thank again the land for holding all of us today. Thank you all for meeting us here, and we hope you go back to your homes and your families and your friends safely. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.